Welcome to the Healthy Compulsive Project podcast, where you can take a deep dive to explore the pitfalls and potential of the obsessive-compulsive personality, offering hope and help for perfectionists, workaholics, micromanagers, type A personality, and control freaks. Hello everyone, Gary Trosclair here, psychotherapist, Jungian psychoanalyst, and author of the Healthy Compulsive Project book, blog, and podcast. Frugality can be a blessing or a curse. It can provide for you in practical ways, but it may also cost you emotionally. It can leave you stingy, obsessed, and austere. Knowing whether it's helpful or harmful for you requires that you know your own tendencies. Too withholding? Too indulgent? If you want to sort this out, it also helps to know your motivations. This isn't just about a bottom line. Depending upon why you're being frugal and how you approach money, it can work for or against you. In this episode, we'll listen in on an imagined therapy session with Franklin, whose frugality is causing conflict in his family and within himself. And we will explore the pros and cons of 4 different motivations for being frugal. In this episode, I cite a lot of scientific studies to support the points that I'm making. You can find the links to these on the blog at www.thehealthycompulsive.com. This is episode 62 of the Healthy Compulsive Project podcast. Being frugal, good self-care, or too emotionally expensive? Being frugal can either enhance or undermine our well-being, depending on why we do it and how we do it. Being frugal may or may not help us to feel good. Let's see how this plays out with an imaginary client, Franklin. So Franklin says, "My wife tells me I'm being too frugal. She says I'm too tight with money. Do you think I am? I mean, do I go too far with it?" And then Gary says, "Well, what do you want to be frugal for? What's your goal?" Franklin, "I just don't want to run out of money. I feel responsible for our family's financial well-being, and I don't want to let them down. That's my nightmare. As you know, we didn't have much money when I was growing up." Then Gary says, "Yeah, but what makes you think you're going to run out of money? You just got a raise and you told me a couple of weeks ago that you've already saved a fair amount of money." And Franklin says, "Either one of us could lose our job. I want to be realistic. I also just think it's good discipline. It's the right thing to do. I don't want to spoil my kids. I also don't want them to be materialistic. Besides, I don't like going out all the time or buying lots of things. I like it simple. I feel better that way. You know, I've been trying to do mindfulness meditation. Besides, you know, she and I have had our troubles. I can't be sure she's going to stick around, and I want to have some security." Gary, "So it sounds like you're telling me that you want to save money so that you'll feel better and because it's the right thing to do." Franklin, "Yes." Gary, "That all makes sense, but you also talked about you holding stuff back from your wife when you're angry at her." Franklin, "Yeah, well, maybe that's in the mix too, but why buy another set of towels when we could send $100 for relief to Haiti?" Franklin did want to donate money, and he actually did, occasionally, but he's usually too scared to do it. Franklin gives 4 common reasons for being frugal, and as you can probably tell, he wasn't really sure exactly why he didn't like spending money. But he was trying to understand it, and that's an important step in making frugality work for us or against us. One danger is that frugality spreads into a broader scarcity mindset, which affects how we approach everything, not just money, from whether we give compliments or to how we spend our time. In this post, we'll explore the pros and cons of being frugal in terms of 4 common motivations and well-being. I'll emphasize motivation because if we forget why we're saving money, frugality becomes an end in itself rather than a means to an end. It no longer leads to a greater sense of well-being, but rather to greater anxiety. So, the first of the motivations, practical security, providing for ourselves and others. Here are the pros. There's lots of research out there about money and happiness. It's contradictory and confusing because the studies often measure different things. But let's cut to the chase. Being frugal so that you have savings does prepare you for catastrophes, and it can reduce anxiety. Providing security for yourself or your family feels good. Interestingly, saving money seems to produce a greater sense of well-being than earning more money. And what you do with that money may or may not help. Spending money on things is less satisfying than spending money on experiences, such as going to dinner, to shows, or on vacation. Another type of experience that enhances our happiness is generosity. The benefits of generosity are well documented. It activates a neural reward system which makes us feel good when we give. So, if being frugal helps you to save money to have a safety net, spend on special experiences, or give to others, it will increase your sense of well-being. Then there are the cons. Simply packing away more money out of a compulsive habit won't increase your sense of well-being. There seems to be a limit on how much money can make us feel better. People generally think that more money leads to more happiness, so they try to earn more and save more money. But some research suggests that more money doesn't necessarily lead to more happiness. It's beyond my purview to tell you just how much money you need, but as a psychotherapist, I can tell you that most people who are obsessive-compulsive tend to err on the side of caution. They try to control outcomes rather than rely on their resilience and ability to deal with change as it happens. I can also tell you that if you spend too much of your time trying to make more money, it probably won't help. Researchers in one study found that, quote, the students who prioritized money ended up less happy a year after graduation compared to their classmates who chose to prioritize time. The results remained the same even after controlling for their happiness before graduation and accounting for their various socioeconomic backgrounds. Close quote. So, if your motivation for being frugal is to have some financial security and to have some money to spend on experience, it may work for you. But if you spend too much of your time trying to make more money, it probably won't. Franklin had both positive and negative results in regard to this practical motivation. He had set himself and his family up for the possibility of being relatively free from anxiety about money. But it had become a habit, and he didn't know where to draw the line. He wanted to be generous with the money he saved and to enjoy using it mindfully, but he clung to it out of insecurity. He had not achieved the sense of security he sought from it. The second motivation I'll talk about is financial independence and relational security. First, the pros. Being financially independent can actually set you up for a good relationship. Not having to depend on or take care of your partner financially can take stress off of the relationship and allow you to focus on the quality of the relationship without worrying about your financial security if the relationship goes bad. If being frugal helps the relationship that way, it's a double gain. No one's wondering if they're really loved or just used for financial security. The cons, however, are that people sometimes try to use money as a substitute for close relationships. People with insecure attachment don't feel certain that their connections with other people are dependable. Money may feel more dependable to them. Understandably, if their caretakers were not dependable when they were young, they might feel the need to find more trustworthy figures, so to speak, to rely on as they become adults. Enter money and frugality. But this substitution of money for relationships doesn't increase our sense of well-being. Even introverts need good relationships. The hit of oxytocin we get from a good hug shows that we're actually wired for connection. One of Franklin's motivations for frugality was to hedge his bets for emotional security rather than invest more fully in his connection with his wife. She could feel that he was holding back not just money, but emotional commitment as well. At times, she wanted to spend money to make up for that. It wasn't just about the towels. Here is the third motivation: psychological well-being, living a simpler life and consuming less to be more content. First, the pros. Frugality is one aspect of the simplicity or minimalist movement, in which people spend very thoughtfully and only on the things that they really value so that they can cultivate a more peaceful mindset. Consciously cultivating that which has meaning, letting go of unnecessary attachments, and consuming less can all lead to a greater sense of well-being. The cons are that this too can backfire. If the motives aren't really about becoming more centered and balanced, and if your motivations are really to avoid feelings of insecurity or shame, it can lead to a sort of financial anorexia. It becomes addictive because it doesn't address the emotional issues that are underlying it. Once the addiction gets going, it's hard to stop. You need more and more of the hit of frugality to feel good, even momentarily. Franklin did want to feel more peaceful, but he had so many other motives for his frugality that not spending did not lead to a greater sense of well-being. It hid the insecurity, shame, and anger that also motivated him. The fourth motivation, conscientiousness, doing the right thing. First, the pros. People with compulsive tendencies tend to be quite conscientious. They obsess about doing the morally right thing and not getting in trouble. This can motivate them to be frugal. And that's not all bad. According to research, conscientiousness leads to success with life satisfaction, affect, income, and wealth. But, and here are the cons, being over-conscientious, which compulsives often do, can get in the way of well-being. Too often, conscientiousness becomes an attempt to prove that they're good people and to escape a sense of shame, rather than just wanting to do the right thing. When that happens, there's no end to how over-conscientious they can get, since it doesn't solve the core issue. Because being over-conscientious about finances can block good self-care and close relationships, well-being becomes hard to achieve. Instead of loosening up, we become tighter and tighter. We can even become masochistic. Sometimes we want to make it look like we're being conscientious when really our motivation is to punish others for what we consider to be indulgent behavior, as if to teach them a lesson, even though they aren't our students. It may be presented as doing the, quote, right thing, but it's often more an act of judgment, resentment, or envy. To sort this out, we need to ask whether it's our responsibility to be the policeman or teacher in this particular situation. Franklin was trying to do the right thing for himself and his kids by teaching them to be mindful of gross consumption. In this way, his conscientious frugality served all of them well. But when it meant that they couldn't buy healthier food, have a fun birthday party, or take a much-needed vacation, it did them more harm than good. His kids compensated with indulgences the minute they could get away with it. Worse, because it was infecting his entire personality, his kids experienced him as someone who is never really happy. Franklin also tightened the purse strings to punish his wife when he was mad at her for things she did or did not do. This was briefly gratifying, but ultimately it eroded the very relationship he said he treasured. Being frugal is just one manifestation of holding on, a primal, deeply wired behavior. It's indispensable for infants to survive and for adults to live responsibly. But as an overachieving and habitual life strategy, it's too limiting. The more adamantly frugality is practiced, the more it affects areas of life other than money. Deepening a scarcity mindset, we then cling to outdated ideas, withhold affection, and become desperate about our lack of time. If frugality becomes generalized, we may lose our happiness, relationships, sense of community, or generosity. And then being frugal becomes very expensive. You can find transcripts of this podcast with links to research sources and lots more at the Healthy Compulsive blog, www.thehealthycompulsive.com. If you'd like to subscribe to the Healthy Compulsive podcast, hit that subscribe button. And for a thorough guide to cultivating the positive potential of the compulsive personality, find my book on Amazon, The Healthy Compulsive, Healing Obsessive-Compulsive Personality Disorder and Taking the Wheel of the Driven Personality. And if you find any of these helpful, let others know by leaving a review. Till next time, enjoy the drive.